Hi, I'm on the phone with Kelli Moore, the original owner of Victoria Valentine. How you doing, Kelly?
Hi, how are you? I'm good.
Great. Can you tell me how did you get Victoria?
Well, it's actually a funny story. My friend had to use the restroom, and we were kind of on a deserted part of town where there was just like literally a couple of antique stores and vintage shops. Like, that's pretty much it. And she had to go to the restroom, so I was like, why don't we just stop here? I'm sure they have a restroom. So we went in there, and she was using the restroom, and I was sitting down on a chair waiting for her. And the shop owner comes over to me, and she has this doll in her hand, and it's like marked $75. And she's like, this doll wants to go home with you. And I was like, it startled me, and I was like, excuse me? And she's like, well, yeah, this doll wants to go home with you. And you look like you're not feeling so good. And so, I think you should take this doll. And I was like, oh, I don't have any money on me right now, any cash. And, don't really have anywhere to store that and stuff. I'm not really into dolls. And she was like, she pulled off the sticker, and she's like, no, it's yours and you can have it. And I said, again, I just tried to tell her that I wasn't interested nicely. Well, she called her partner, I don't know if it's her husband or person who works there, to get a bag, and she put the doll in a bag and was like still insisting that I take this doll. Like, I wasn't going to leave that store without the doll. So I told her thank you, and we, left. And on our way out, I noticed, like, when we were in the car, that the doll had just the horrible smell of, like, what I could describe as, like, a rotting flesh. I mean, it just smelled so awful. And so we stopped at the store to get some potpourri, Febreze to spray in the car. And I told my friend, maybe we should, get her, they had a little bundle of sunflowers. And I was like, maybe we should get her these sunflowers and bring it to her, because that was a really nice, gesture. And so we went back out to the car, sprayed the car, went back to the store. It hadn't been, but maybe 20 minutes later, there was still 2 hours of the store being opened, according to the door sign. Well, when we got back there, she immediately, like, grabbed the close sign and stuck it in the door when she saw us coming, and, like, shut the door and was like, we're closed. And I was like, I just thought that was so strange. And I was like, just trying to, like, show her that I had flowers. And she was like, we're closed. And I was like, okay. So we went back to, at that point, we just went back to the house. And when I got back to the house, I threw the flowers and the doll away in the trash, because it smelled so bad. And I was staying with my friend at the time and her dad, and we threw it away. And yeah, so
So after you threw it away, of course that wasn't the last of Victoria.
right.
How did you get her back?
Well, I threw it away, and that was the same night, about like 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I was burning hot. I mean, I was just literally running really high fever. And it was weird because I wasn't sick prior to that. And I noticed that my arms are burning, and I looked down, and there was like blood on the sheets, and my arms were like full of scratches. I mean, covered in scratches. So I went and woke my friend up, and I was like, hey, did you scratch me? And she was like, no, of course not. And so I thought, well, maybe I was just having a bad dream, because I was having a bad dream, before, I woke up. And it was about the doll. And it was like something was telling me to go get that doll out of the trash. And so I, at 3 o'clock in the morning, went out and pulled the doll out of the trash and came inside to their washroom, and I noticed that the light was on. And Mr. Danny, who's my friend's stepdad, the one that we were staying with, was sitting in there, and he was just like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't sleep. And he was like smoking a cigarette. And he was like, oh, wow. He's like, what a beautiful doll. And so he was like, let me see it. And so I handed him the doll, and he's like, I want it. it was so strange. It was like this such an awkward moment. And I told him, I was like, well, why don't we just put it in the living room, and once I'm done washing its dress, I'll dress it back up and we can put it in the living room, and we can all share it. And he's like, okay. So that was that for that night, and then I went ahead and went on to bed. But,
So, I remember you saying that there's about pins in her chest.
oh wait, no, but I want to like back it up, before that, and tell you, because this is a very important part of the story of when I realized that something was wrong with the doll. Is Mr. Danny goes, the next day he was just like really like, I don't want to say like obsessing over the doll, but like really like attached to the doll. It was really strange, and like very out of his character. He was just acting the next day very out of his character. And this man, prior to this, had never had any type of mental illness or like anything like that. He was a very God-fearing man. He, was a part of a church, constantly, going to a church, something they had at the church. And he was, a minister in his church. So he was just acting very out of his character. And this man's the sweetest man ever, literally. And the next night, he tried to, it wasn't night, it was about evening, he tried to burn down the house with us in it. And when the police got there, luckily the house did not fully catch, on fire. Police were able to get there in time before anything could really do a bunch of damage. I think everything was, okay, but it just was really startling to everybody, and he ended up, getting arrested and having to go to a mental facility for like 2 weeks. And when he came back, we didn't press charges or anything because it was so out of his character. And when he came back, we had asked him why he did that, and he said he had no recollection of it. But when that day the police said that the doll made him do it, like that the doll told him, not made him, but told him to do it. But he had no recollection of that. The police told us that day when they had spoke to us after all that he had no recollection of it, of what happened. He just said he just cannot remember that day.
Okay. Now, how did the doll affect you? I mean, and how did it?
Well, after that, just like I said, stuff kept happening in the home. I was waking up every night while I was in there at 3 o'clock in the morning, like clockwork. It would be 3 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. I would get these high fevers for no reason. I mean, just burning hot. And I mean, I would take my temperature and it'd be like 104, like very unhealthy temperature for somebody to constantly have. And then I would have these, scratch marks, and I was like just seeing things, the crosses on his walls. He had all these crosses because, like I told you, he was really big into church. They would flip upside down by themselves. He started getting boils all on his skin. We were all being affected by it. I was getting scratches on my skin. He was getting boils all over his skin. It was really terrifying. He was getting very sick. I was getting very sick. My roommate, my friend, was getting very sick. And she was more like acting, had a lot of anger and rage that she had never had before. After us having the doll, to the point where she tried to harm me after that. And that was kind of my point where I said, it was messing with the electricity, just all these crazy things were happening. It was affecting all of us. And I decided to leave there because I thought that if I left, everything would just go away. I didn't realize that it was completely the doll at that point, though I would notice things on the camera and stuff where the doll would be changing facial expressions when I would take pictures of the doll, hair color changing, just in the pictures of the doll's face would always change, her hands, just I still didn't believe in paranormal stuff. You have to realize I myself was Jehovah Witness before that. So they don't really believe in, paranormal stuff. So I didn't really at that point still believe it. I didn't want to see it until I left, and the problem followed me. And I started getting really sick. Even after moving, I started getting very sick with my chest, these strange chest pains, and the still waking up at 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon with this, the same thing still happening. But I was getting sicker. And my attachment to the doll was getting stronger and stronger, to the point where my family and friends were noticing it, and I had lost all my friends at that point. It was even to the point where my mother didn't even want to come over anymore because I had the doll. And, she just said that something was very wrong with me. And she would send preachers over, and then they wouldn't want to come in they would be coming over to do blessings and stuff, and then they would stop at the door and not come any further, because they just said that there was something very strong entity that they didn't want to deal with, which is really crazy, because it's like, if you can't turn to preachers and who can you turn to?
And I remember before you were showing me those videos. I mean, you always lived alone, and
yes.
I remember it was like a game. You were telling Victoria, turn on the light,